Some wounds ain't physical. They cut deeper than any blade, right down to your soul, especially when they're carved by the one person you loved and trusted more than life itself. Until that one fateful night, I truly believed I was the luckiest woman on God's green earth. Then, one kick from my husband, Jamal, didn't just shatter a bone in my leg. It shattered my heart and my trust into a million irreparable pieces. But in that darkest, most desperate moment, a flicker of hope ignited in the pure eyes of my 6-year-old daughter. A violent Georgia rain hammered against the window panes, its rhythm as furious as the rage of the man standing over me. A horrifying pain that started in my left calf shot up to the crown of my head, stealing even the breath I needed to scream. All I could do was lie curled up on the cold hardwood floor, biting my lip until I tasted blood. My vision blurred, but I could see the polished shine of my husband Jamal's dress shoes, planted right in front of me, with sickening clarity. He bent down and yanked me up by my hair, snapping my head back. The handsome face I once adored was now twisted and darkened with fury. "How dare you defy me, you damn freeloader? I asked for 50 grand for the business, and you can't even give me that. You waitin' for me to end up on the streets, huh?" Every word was a dagger twisting in my chest. A freeloader. I had quit my career at his request to devote myself to our family, to raising our daughter. My savings, the condo my parents left me when they got married, I had poured it all into his ventures, and now, in his eyes, I was nothing but a parasite. Swallowing my tears, I barely managed to whisper, I swear I don't have any more money, baby. I gave you the last of my savings last month." "You lie," Jamal snarled, his grip tightening on my hair. "Your foster parents who raised you, they left you that house when they passed. You sold it and hid the money, didn't you? Tell me now." That house was the last memento I had of my adoptive parents. But it too had been sold 3 years ago to pay for his heart surgery when he claimed he was gravely ill. Had he already forgotten? I didn't have the strength to explain. The pain in my leg was consuming my entire consciousness. Instinctively, I knew something was terribly wrong. Beyond the searing agony, I couldn't feel my leg at all. Drenched in tears and sweat, I begged him desperately, "Please, stop. My leg hurts so bad." Jamal smiled, a cruel, cold smirk that sent a shiver down my spine. He let go of my hair, and my head slammed against the floor. "It hurts? It's supposed to hurt. Maybe it'll knock some sense into you. Maybe it'll teach you to stop running your smart mouth." He threw those chilling words at me, then walked over to the sofa and picked up his phone. A moment later, his voice did a complete 180, becoming impossibly tender and sweet. "Yeah, baby, I'm here. Just finishing up some business. I'll be over to see you and our little man soon as I'm done. I miss y'all so much." "Our little man?" My heart stopped. Did I hear him right? Who was he talking to? What son? My mind was a whirlwind of chaos, the psychological shock eclipsing the physical pain. That's when I heard a faint sob coming from behind the cracked open door of my daughter's bedroom. Arzola, how long had she been standing there? The child was hiding behind the door, her eyes wide and round with terror, filled with tears, her little hands clamped over her mouth to stifle any sound. The sight of my daughter tore my heart to shreds. She saw everything. She had witnessed this monstrous scene. Jamal heard the sound too. He abruptly ended the call and glared at the child with rage. "What you crying for? Get your behind back in your room and shut the door." Zola flinched and began to tremble, but she didn't move. She was looking at me. There was fear in her eyes, but also a flash of intelligence, remarkable for her age. In that moment, in the abyss of my despair, a single spark of hope ignited. Looking at my daughter, fighting back the pain, I gave a barely perceptible shake of my head. Then, I discreetly pointed a finger at my phone, which was lying on the end table next to the sofa. My gaze was a desperate prayer. I wasn't sure if my little girl would understand my intention, but Zola was far smarter than I thought. She glanced at where I was pointing, then back at me, and blinked. Then, so only I could see it, she gave a minimal nod. As Jamal turned toward the window to light a cigarette, Zola, like a little kitten, silently tiptoed barefoot toward the sofa. My heart was pounding like a drum. I prayed silently for Jamal not to turn around. I held my breath, praying. When she got close to the table, she deliberately pretended to trip, crying out, "Ouch!" and falling forward. Her hand knocked my phone, which landed silently on the thick rug. "Clumsy fool!" Jamal yelled without even turning around. That was the moment. Zola quickly picked up the phone, but instead of putting it back on the table, she clutched it to her chest and slipped under the table, out of Jamal's line of sight. I could see her small, trembling hands touching the screen. The unlock code was her birthday, something I had taught her just in case. The screen lit up, and she tapped on the contacts, her little fingers scrolling through the list until she stopped on the name I had saved as Grandpops John. She pressed the phone to her ear, her small lips pressed tightly together. The words wouldn't come out. I knew she was scared, but she was doing everything she could. And finally, I heard my daughter's trembling, broken voice whispering into the receiver, words I will never forget for the rest of my life. Grandpops, Mama's gonna die. Silence on the other end. A second, 2, 3. A silence that felt like an eternity hung in the tense air. I had almost lost hope, but then a low, warm yet authoritative voice came from the small speaker. It was very quiet but strangely clear. My Zola, you're a good girl. Can you tell Grandpops where y'all are right now? The low, firm voice of Grandpops that I heard through the phone was like a soothing balm, instantly pulling me from the abyss of terror. It was a simple question, but it carried a strange sense of security that made me realize I was no longer alone. I quickly brought my mouth to the phone in my daughter's hands. My voice trembled, but it was much clearer than before. Pops, it's me, Imani. I struggled to say the address of the rundown apartment complex in Bankhead that Jamal had rented, the place that had become my personal hell. I understand. There was no hint of hesitation in his voice. Both of you, stay in the room, lock the door, and do not, under any circumstances, open it for anyone, not even your husband. Grandpops is on his way. The call ended, and the screen went dark. Zola looked at me with tear-filled eyes. She was still afraid, but a glimmer of hope now danced in her gaze. I hugged her tightly. My heart was still racing, but no longer from fear. It was a feeling of intense anticipation, a belief that this nightmare would soon be over. I carried my daughter into the bathroom, where I quickly washed the tears from both our faces. I had to be calm. I had to show strength for my daughter. I didn't know how or how quickly Grandpops would arrive, but I trusted him completely, just as I had since I was a child. Time crawled by at a suffocatingly slow pace. I sat on the bed, holding my daughter, listening for any sound from outside. The rain was letting up. All I could hear was the rhythmic dripping of water on the tin roof. After about 20 minutes, I heard a strange sound coming from the street. It wasn't the usual rumble of a passing car. It was the heavy growl of several luxury SUVs pulling into the narrow street. A moment later, I heard the sharp screech of brakes and the firm slam of car doors. My heart stopped. It was Grandpops. It had to be him. Before I could process it, I heard the brisk footsteps of several people approaching our building. They were completely different from Jamal's steps, rhythmic, authoritative, carrying an overwhelming aura. Then, the door of the apartment across the hall flew open, and I heard the shrill voice of the landlady. What's all this noise in the middle of the night? Who y'all looking for? But her voice immediately died down, replaced by a muffled gasp of astonishment. Curious, I peeked through the crack in our door and froze at what I saw. It wasn't just one person standing before the landlady. It was 4 powerfully built men in sharp black suits, their faces as stony as something out of a movie. And in the center of them stood my Grandpops. He no longer looked like the kindly old man from my memory. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored gray suit, standing tall, leaning on an ebony cane with a silver head. His hair was gray, but his eyes burned with a sharp, commanding glint that would make anyone dare not look him in the face. "Where is Imani's room?" Grandpops asked. His voice wasn't loud, but its weight made even the always confident landlady tremble as she pointed to our door. Grandpops nodded, giving a signal, and 2 of the men immediately approached our door. "Imani, it's me, Grandpops. Open up." At the sound of that familiar voice, I rushed to open the door. The moment it swung open, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I threw myself into his arms and burst into loud sobs. "Grandpops!" He hugged me tightly, his warm hand patting my trembling back. It's all right. Grandpops is here. No one's gonna hurt you or that baby again." Just then, the rumble of Jamal's beat-up sedan came from the street. He had probably finished his call with his lover and was returning to play the role of the caring husband. When he saw the luxury SUVs blocking the street and the men in black suits standing outside the door, his face lost all its color. Confused, he parked his car and ran up, shouting, "What the hell is going on here? Who are you people?" When he saw me in Grandpop's arms, his confusion turned to anger and astonishment. "Imani, and who is this old man?" he yelled disrespectfully, pointing a finger at my grandfather. Grandpops slowly turned. His razor-sharp gaze pierced right through Jamal. It was so cold it seemed to freeze the air around them. "So, you're Jamal, my granddaughter's husband. And what if I am? Who the hell are you to be barging into someone's home?" Jamal, still oblivious to who he was dealing with, remained aggressive. "Who I am doesn't matter." Grandpop's voice was low and controlled. "What matters is what you just did to my granddaughter." As he spoke, his eyes fell on my swollen leg. One of the men standing beside him immediately understood his intention and took a step forward. His voice was as cold as ice. "Mr. Jamal King, you are being detained on suspicion of domestic assault. Please come with us." "What? Domestic assault? Don't be talking crazy without no proof." Jamal started yelling, panicked. "The proof is the wounds on my granddaughter's body," Grandpop said, "and the phone call for help from my great-granddaughter. Isn't that enough?" Jamal was speechless, his face ashen. He looked at me, then at Zola hiding behind me. Disbelief was painted across his face. He never imagined that the daughter he ignored would be his undoing. When he couldn't utter another word, two of the security men stepped forward and grabbed his arms firmly. "What are you doing? Amani, say something. You want to destroy your own husband?" he screamed, struggling desperately. I just stared at him in silence. There was no longer a shred of pity in my eyes, only contempt and coldness. Grandpop signaled to another man, who immediately handed the landlady a thick envelope of cash. "This should be enough for the back rent, and as compensation for the trouble this man has caused you. From now on, what happened here tonight never happened. Do we understand each other?" The landlady, seeing the envelope, beamed and nodded eagerly. Yes, of course. I ain't see nothin'. I don't know nothin'." Everything was handled quickly and efficiently. Grandpops turned back to me and said again in his warm voice, "Let's go, child. We're going home." Grandpops took Zola in his arms. The child, feeling completely safe, buried her face in his chest. Another man helped me walk. I was led to one of the luxury SUVs. Inside, a woman in a white coat was waiting. "This is our family doctor. She'll tend to your injuries," Grandpops explained. The car pulled away slowly, leaving behind the rundown apartment building and my brutal husband being led away by security. I looked out the window. The lights of Atlanta still glittered, but in my heart, a powerful storm was just beginning. At the end of this road, I was about to find not only the truth, but also a family and support I had never dared to dream of. The luxury SUV glided through the city at night. The ride was so smooth I didn't feel a single bump a world away from the crowded city buses or Jamal's old car. In the vehicle, the doctor gently cleaned and bandaged my leg. Fortunately, the bone wasn't broken, but the soft tissue damage was severe and would require a long rest. Zola, exhausted from the terror, had fallen into a deep sleep in Grandpop's arms. Looking at her angelic face, I felt a pang in my heart again. What would have become of us tonight if not for Zola's call? I looked at the man sitting next to me, the man my daughter called Grandpops. In my hazy memories, his figure was just a collection of vague fragments. I was born and immediately abandoned at an orphanage. A kind couple, both civil servants, adopted me. They weren't wealthy, but our home was always filled with love. My adoptive father, James, was an engineer at a construction company. He was a man of few words but loved his wife and daughter unconditionally. My adoptive mother, Mary, was an elementary school teacher. She was always gentle with me and taught me what was right. I loved them and was as grateful to them as if they were my real parents. And in the memories of that happy childhood, a special man sometimes appeared, a man my parents always respectfully called Mr. Washington. My current grandpops, John. Back then, Mr. Washington was the owner of the construction group where my adoptive father worked, and also his closest friend. I remember how he would come to our house every holiday with loads of presents. He had no children of his own, having lost his wife early. That's why he had a special affection for me. He would sit me on his knee, stroke my head, and say, "This child is so bright and clever. She's going to grow up to be someone great." His gaze was always warm and full of tenderness. Grandpops also paid for my entire education, from elementary school through college, saying that an investment in education is never a loss. My adoptive parents initially refused, but he insisted, saying he just wanted to do something for the granddaughter he'd grown so fond of. Tragedy struck when I was in my final year of college. My adoptive parents were killed in a car accident while on a business trip. My world collapsed. When I was at my lowest, it was Mr. Washington who took care of all the funeral arrangements. He comforted me and gave me strength. Your parents are gone, but you still have this old grandpops. From now on, treat me like real family. After that, grandpops helped me find a stable job in one of his group's companies. My life gradually returned to normal, and the sadness slowly faded. And then I met Jamal. He was a new employee in the sales department, 2 years older than me. He was tall, handsome, had a way with words, and always seemed ambitious. He told me about his difficult childhood and how hard he had worked to get where he was. I, still grieving the loss of my family and desperate for support, quickly fell for his sincerity and determination. We fell in love. When I first introduced Jamal to Mr. Washington, I still remember his gaze to this day. Grandpop said nothing, just observed him in silence. That evening, he called me into his study. Imani, he said in a heavy voice, this young man seems sharp, but his eyes ain't honest. I can't interfere in your love life, but be careful. It's hard to know what's hidden in a man's heart. I, blinded by love, dismissed his warning. I thought Grandpops was being too suspicious, that Jamal was a good man. I even told myself he was probably just a little tense because he came from a poor family. Mr. Washington just sighed and said nothing more. A year later, we got married. Mr. Washington gave me a luxury condo in Buckhead and a substantial amount of savings as a wedding gift. He said it was the assets my adoptive parents had saved for me. After the wedding, Jamal said he didn't want to be seen as someone who relied on his wife's family and wanted to start his own company. He showed me a very convincing business plan. I, trusting him completely, gave him all my savings without hesitation, and even the money from selling the condo from Grandpops. When Zola was born, Jamal said he would handle the finances, and I should stay home to take care of the child. I listened to him again, and that was the beginning of my tragedy. Jamal's business apparently wasn't going well. He constantly complained about difficulties and asked for more money. I had nothing left to give. I could only support him emotionally. Gradually, his attitude began to change. He became irritable and often got angry with me. The arguments became more frequent, and finally, the violence began. At first, only when he was drunk, but later it became a habit. He would take out his frustrations on me every time something went wrong. I endured it all for my daughter's sake and with the faint hope that he might change. I couldn't bring myself to tell Mr. Washington about it. I was afraid of worrying him and that he would be disappointed in my choice. I bottled up all the pain. Until tonight, when everything crossed the line. The car stopped in front of a stylish, large mansion with a garden in Ansley Park. This was where Mr. Washington lived after he retired. I had only been here a few times. When I walked inside, the calm and majestic atmosphere of the house strangely soothed me. Mr. Washington led us to a large room upstairs. This was your adoptive mother's room, Grandpop said. From now on, this is your home. I looked around the room. Everything was carefully preserved. On the desk, there was still a photo of my smiling adoptive parents. I burst into tears again. After so many years, I had come home. That night, for the first time in years, I was able to sleep deeply, without nightmares of violence, without insults. I fell asleep peacefully, surrounded by the love of family. I knew that tomorrow a new life and a new battle would begin. And this time, I wouldn't be fighting alone. The next morning, I woke up to sunbeams pouring through the large window, casting a warm glow on the wooden floor. The pain in my leg was still a dull throb, but my mind was strangely clear. Zola was sleeping soundly beside me. She was probably sleeping peacefully for the first time in a long while after so many hours spent in fear. Carefully, so as not to make a noise, I got out of bed. When I saw my reflection in the large vanity mirror, I was startled. The woman in the mirror was terribly worn down. Her eyes were swollen, her face ashen, and a faint bruise from Jamal's slap yesterday was visible on her cheek. But deep within those tired eyes, a fire of anger and determination was beginning to burn. I couldn't live like this anymore. I had to change, for myself and for my daughter. I took a shower and changed into clean loungewear prepared by the housekeeper. When I went down to the dining room, a lavish breakfast was waiting. Grandpops was reading the newspaper, and next to him sat a very intelligent-looking middle-aged man in an impeccable suit and glasses. When Grandpop saw me coming down, he smiled. That kind smile was back on his face. "You're up, my girl. Come, have some breakfast. Let me introduce you. This is Attorney Thompson, my personal lawyer and most trusted friend." I nodded to Attorney Thompson. He also stood up and politely took my hand. "Mrs. King, good morning. Mr. Washington has told me everything. I'm very sorry for what you've been through, but I'm glad you managed to get out of there. During breakfast, the atmosphere wasn't heavy at all. Grandpops and Attorney Thompson carefully asked about my situation but didn't delve into my pain. They talked about plans for the future, about Zola's education, and about places I could visit to soothe my soul. They were helping me look forward. After breakfast, we went to Grandpop's study. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves were filled with new and old books. The air here was filled with a majestic and intellectual atmosphere. Imani, Grandpops began, his voice turning serious. This is not the time to wallow in sadness. We need to act, and fast. Attorney Thompson continued, opening his briefcase and taking out a file of documents. Mrs. King, on Mr. Washington's orders, I've conducted a preliminary investigation into Mr. Jamal King. The first thing we must do is immediately freeze all your joint assets to prevent him from hiding them. Joint assets? I don't think we have any of those left. All my money went into his company. Attorney Thompson smiled professionally. Not necessarily. From a legal standpoint, you are still married, so everything needs to be reevaluated. Besides, we need to trace where the money you gave him actually went. Grandpops nodded. Exactly. That brazen scoundrel couldn't have just failed in business. There's something more to it. Attorney, please investigate all his financial activities for the past 3 years. Go through everything, down to the last dollar. Don't miss a single detail. Yes, Mr. Washington, Attorney Thompson replied. We've had him under surveillance since last night. He was released on bail, but strangely, he doesn't seem worried at all. This morning, our people even saw him at an exclusive cafe with a certain woman. At those words, my heart clenched with pain again. Who is this woman? My voice trembled slightly. We are verifying her identity, but one thing is certain, their relationship did not look platonic. Attorney Thompson showed me a photo taken from a distance. It wasn't clear, but you could see Jamal sitting very close to a woman, tenderly holding her hand. And this is the most important part, Attorney Thompson continued. Right after you left the apartment, he went back. Our people overheard his phone conversation. He spoke in a very agitated voice. The plan's gone sideways. That bitch turned out to be tougher than I thought. I gotta find another way. Plan, that bitch. He was talking about me, about us, and about Grandpops. So, what happened yesterday wasn't just a random outburst from Jamal. It was part of some plan I had no idea about. With every moment, everything was becoming more complicated and terrifying. There's one more thing, Mrs. King, said Attorney Thompson. Legally, we have enough evidence to charge him with domestic violence. But to ensure you get full custody of Zola and that he receives a harsher punishment, we need more proof that he is an unfit father and evidence of his other illegal activities. Grandpops looked at me, his gaze firm. Imani, I know this will be very difficult for you, but you must be strong. This is your fight. Do you want to just get a divorce and take alimony? Or do you want to go all the way, expose his true face to the world, and get justice for the years you've suffered? I looked at Grandpops, then at Attorney Thompson. The fire of anger and determination inside me blazed fiercely. I had already lost too much. I couldn't lose my daughter, and I couldn't watch the man who destroyed my life get away with it. I want to go all the way. My voice no longer trembled. It was strangely calm. I want him to pay for everything. Grandpops nodded with satisfaction. Good, my girl. Then let's begin our plan. For the rest of the day, I sat in the study with Grandpops and Attorney Thompson. They drafted a very detailed, multi-stage plan. I, who had been a passive victim, now became part of the plan, an important element in the upcoming legal and psychological war. I knew the road ahead would be bumpy, but I was no longer afraid, because behind me was no longer a wall of cold loneliness, but a powerful empire, ready to protect and support me. In the following days, I pushed aside my personal sorrow and focused on the plan devised by Grandpops and Attorney Thompson. The luxurious mansion in Ansley Park became our command center. Attorney Thompson came every day to report on progress and analyze new information together. I, a simple housewife who only knew how to run a home, began to familiarize myself with legal and financial terminology I had never heard before. I devoured the materials brought by the attorney, trying to understand every aspect of the war I was about to wage. Grandpops didn't directly participate in the investigation, but he set the strategic direction and used his extensive network to support us. His calm and wisdom were a solid psychological anchor for me. The first and most crucial step was to file a motion in court on my behalf to immediately freeze all joint bank accounts belonging to me and Jamal. Simultaneously, A request was filed with the relevant institutions to prohibit any transactions of purchase, sale, or transfer of ownership related to connected assets. It was a preemptive strike, aimed at cutting off Jamal's escape route and preventing him from hiding the remaining assets. As we predicted, this move made Jamal thrash about like a cornered animal. He called and texted me constantly. At first, he tried to sweet-talk me, begging me to withdraw the lawsuit. "Imani, what are you doing? Why did you freeze the accounts? I urgently need money for the project. If you do this, you'll kill me." When I didn't respond, he switched to threats. "Oh, so you really think you can do this to me just because you've got that old man behind you? Listen to me carefully. Don't back me into a corner. If you do, neither you nor my daughter will be safe." Instead of frightening me, these messages only fueled my anger. I forwarded everything to Attorney Thompson, and they became powerful evidence of his brutal and vile nature. Meanwhile, Attorney Thompson's team worked very efficiently. In just 3 days, they brought the first results of their investigation. Attorney Thompson spread a file of documents on the large oak desk in Grandpop's study. "Mr. Washington, Mrs. King, we have our first lead." He pointed to a thick stack of bank statements. "This is the history of transfers that Mrs. King sent to Mr. Jamal King's account over the last 3 years. The total amount exceeds a couple $1,000,000. That's no small sum." Looking at the densely printed pages of numbers, I felt a tightness in my chest. A couple million. It was all my savings and the money from the sale of my adoptive parents' house. I had given him everything without hesitation, and in return, I received bitter betrayal. And this is the most important part. Attorney Thompson turned the page. All this money, after being deposited into Mr. King's account, was not invested in any construction company he spoke of. Instead, it was broken down and transferred in a complex manner through many accounts, ultimately all flowing into one account. He circled a name on the statement. This account belongs to a company called Golden Future Investments, LLC. Golden Future. I frowned. I had never heard that name before. "No surprise there," said the attorney. "This company was founded about 3 years ago, which coincides with the time Mr. King started talking about starting his own business. And the legal representative of this company is not Mr. King." He turned over another document. It was a copy from the Secretary of State's office. I held my breath and looked at the CEO column. An unfamiliar name appeared, LaToya Jenkins. "Who is LaToya Jenkins?" Grandpops asked in his low, firm voice. "She's the woman who met with Mr. King at the cafe," the attorney replied, providing a clearer photo. The photo showed a beautiful, stylish woman in her late 20s, smiling affectionately beside Jamal. Everything became clear. There was no startup project. Golden Future was a shell company, a front created to legally seize my money. With my money, he started a company for his mistress, building a golden future for them. A future built on my sacrifice and my tears. A cold rage swelled in my heart. I hadn't just been emotionally cheated, I had been completely and methodically financially defrauded. "What's the address of this company?" I asked in a firm voice. "The registered address is a Class A office in downtown Atlanta, but our people checked and found they only rent a virtual office there, and rarely does anyone visit. But we've obtained the address of the apartment where this LaToya Jenkins lives. It's a luxury high-rise in Buckhead," said Attorney Thompson. Grandpops, who had been silent until now, spoke. A sharp spark flashed in his eyes. "Attorney, please investigate this LaToya Jenkins even more deeply. Her past, her connections, everything. I want to know everything. At the same time, don't take your eyes off this Jamal. I have a feeling this case won't end with just an affair and fraud." "Yes, Mr. Washington." Grandpops's words sent a shiver down my spine. He was right. How could a young woman like LaToya organize such a sophisticated fraud with Jamal? Was someone behind her? And was the brutal... The pieces of the puzzle were slowly starting to fit together, but they raised even bigger questions I dared not even imagine. I felt that this fight would be far more complicated and dangerous than I thought. The following days of waiting stretched on like an eternity. With each passing day, I felt a growing sense of unease. I worried about my own fate, but above all, about Zola. The child was too young to understand the storm raging through our family. She only wondered why she couldn't see her daddy and why her mama was always sad. I had to lie, holding her and telling her that daddy had gone on a very long business trip. Every time I lied to her, I felt my heart break. While I was grappling with emotional turmoil, Attorney Thompson's team and the private investigators hired by Grandpops worked tirelessly, like busy bees, gathering drops of truth in a world full of traps and lies. One late afternoon, Attorney Thompson called me. His voice was more serious than usual. "Mrs. King, could you come to my office immediately? I have some new discoveries, and I think you should see this with your own eyes." A bad feeling clenched my heart. I quickly entrusted Zola to the housekeeper's care and drove to the attorney's office downtown. His office was on the top floor of a skyscraper with a magnificent view of the Atlanta skyline. But in my eyes, the city, though splendid, seemed gray. Attorney Thompson was already waiting for me in the conference room. On the large table lay several folders and a laptop. "Please sit down," he said in a quiet voice. "What you're about to see might be quite shocking. You need to prepare yourself." I nodded, squeezing my hands tightly in my lap. "Please, tell me. I can handle anything." Attorney Thompson sighed and turned the laptop screen toward me. "We've dug deeper into this LaToya Jenkins. She's not a simple woman. On the surface, she's the CEO of a startup, but in reality, she has a rather complicated past. And most importantly, she and Mr. King didn't just meet recently." He pressed the play button. A series of photos appeared on the screen. The first showed Jamal and LaToya holding hands affectionately on a beach in Miami. The date on the photo indicated it was taken about 3 years ago, just a few months after I sold my adoptive parents' house to pay for Jamal's supposed heart surgery. So that heart condition was just a perfidious lie, a performance to swindle the last of my significant assets from me. That money was spent on a trip with his mistress to start a new life. The weight in my chest made it hard to breathe. But that wasn't the worst of it. Attorney Thompson scrolled through more photos. These were photographs from the last 2 years. They captured moments that should have belonged to me and my daughter. Jamal tenderly feeding a chubby little boy. Jamal patiently teaching the child to walk in a luxurious apartment. Jamal, LaToya, and that child, joyfully blowing out candles on a birthday cake. The image of this new family was so perfect and happy that it was painful. "Who is that child?" My voice trembled uncontrollably. "That is Mr. King and Miss Jenkins' son." Attorney Thompson's voice was also heavy. "His name is Tyson, and he's over 2 years old. Mr. King has been deceiving you and living a double life." "Tyson." I repeated the name. Even the name of his hidden son was similar to our daughter Zola's. His cruelty knew no bounds, so that was it. This was the true face of the dutiful husband for whom I had sacrificed everything. He didn't just cheat on me. He had a second family. He was the father of another child. The money I saved and borrowed to give him was not for a business, but to support his little wife. He had turned me into a cash cow, working hard for someone else's happiness. This truth was more painful than any physical violence. It was an insult and a trampling of my dignity and all my love. I sat motionless. The tears flowed endlessly, but this time they were not tears of weakness. They were tears for my foolishness, for my completely deceived youth. "Mrs. King." Attorney Thompson handed me a tissue. "I know this is hard to accept, but we must face this truth. This evidence is a knockout blow. The fact that he fathered a child and deliberately hid it will allow us to fully prove that he grossly violated his marital and family obligations. The court will certainly rule in your favor regarding the division of assets and custody of Zola." I wiped my tears and lifted my head. My gaze turned as cold as a knife's edge. "He won't just lose custody, attorney," I said firmly. "I want him to be punished for fraud and embezzlement as well. I want him and that woman to be socially destroyed." Attorney Thompson nodded. "That is precisely the next stage of our plan. Their company, Golden Future, is not just a front for money laundering. They are also conducting a series of illegal business activities. We are currently gathering additional evidence of tax and trade fraud. The net of justice is already tightening, Mrs. King." I left the attorney's office as the city began to light up. I felt empty, but at the same time, I was filled with determination. All love and sentiment for that man had vanished. All that remained inside me was a mother who wanted to reclaim justice for herself and her daughter's future. This was a fight I could not lose. While my team and I were quietly but ever more tightly closing the net of the law around Jamal and his mistress, they, on the other side, seemed oblivious to the coming storm. Or perhaps it was overconfidence that blinded them. After several days without contact from me, and after discovering his bank accounts were frozen, Jamal began to realize the situation was not as simple as he thought. He could no longer play the role of the unfortunate husband misunderstood by his wife. He decided to play his last trump card, a card he believed would surely break the heart of a sentimental and loyal woman like me, and force me into submission. That card was his mother, my mother-in-law. One morning, as I was playing with Zola in the garden, the housekeeper ran up, breathless. "Ma'am, there's an older lady at the gate. She claims to be your mother-in-law, and she's causing a scene." My heart sank. Mother-in-law. How long had it been since I'd seen her? Apart from a few visits to our home after the wedding, that was it. She was a simple woman from the country, but her love for her son was so immense that she was harsh and demanding toward his wife. In her eyes, her son Jamal was always the best, and all his mistakes deserved forgiveness. I felt that her visit this time was definitely not to offer well wishes. "Let her in," I told the housekeeper calmly. I picked up Zola and asked her to go play with grandpops while I went to the living room. I wanted to face her alone. As soon as she saw me, my mother-in-law rushed over. But not to hit or berate me. Instead, she started sobbing loudly, grabbing my hands. "Daughter-in-law, Imani, how can you be so heartless? I won't let go. No, not until you promise to forgive our Jamal. I'm not getting up. He's my only son. What will I do if something happens to him?" She began to wail pitifully. She told me that after I abandoned him, Jamal had completely broken down. He wasn't eating, not sleeping, just drinking. And his company had come to a standstill. She talked about how much he loved me, and that everything he did was to provide a better life for me, and that he only lost control for a moment due to stress. "Him hitting you was wrong. I'm not going to make excuses for him. But after he hit you, his heart was breaking with pain too. He regrets it now. How can you as a wife push your own husband to the brink? You're blocking his accounts, suing him. You want to send him to prison? Who's going to raise our Zola if he goes to jail? Who's going to take care of his future?" Every word she said targeted my soft spots: the marital bond, the child's future. She portrayed Jamal as a miserable but responsible husband and father who, due to a moment of weakness, was risking everything. Her performance was so perfect that if I didn't have those photos and recordings, I might have fallen for it myself. But now, I could only smile bitterly. I pulled my leg from her grasp and took a step back. I looked straight at the woman putting on this show in front of me. "Ma'am." My voice was cold and distant. "Please, stop the act. That kind of drama doesn't work on me anymore." My mother-in-law froze. Her crying stopped. She looked at me, her eyes no longer filled with sadness, but with astonishment and anger. What? What are you talking about?" "Ma'am, please go back to your son and tell him that if he truly regrets it, he should go to the police and confess everything. If he intends to continue putting on these performances, we'll see each other in court." My mother-in-law jumped to her feet. The pitiful expression vanished. She finally showed her true face. "You ungrateful, venomous snake! Our Jamal's biggest mistake was marrying someone like you. You think just because you have money and connections, you can destroy our family? You'll see. I won't let you get away with this." She started hurling the worst curses and insults at me, things I had never heard before, but it didn't hurt me anymore. I watched her in silence, like watching some cheap Tyler Perry drama. "Security," I called out, "please escort the guest out." 2 security guards immediately approached and led my mother-in-law outside. She struggled and screamed, but she stood no chance against 2 powerful men. "You'll regret this, you nasty woman. I won't let you get away with this." Her voice still carried from beyond the gates. Silence returned to the house, but a storm raged in my heart. The mother-in-law's performance had failed, but it showed one thing even more clearly. They would never give up. Greed and selfishness were deeply ingrained in their bones. They wouldn't shy away from any dirty trick to achieve their goal. And I knew that after this sentimental act, an even more malicious attack awaited me. I had to be ready for anything. This was not just a legal battle. It was a psychological war, a war for my honor. After my mother-in-law's failed performance, I realized I could no longer remain on the defensive. Waiting for them to attack, and then parrying their blows always put me in a passive position. It was time for me to undergo a transformation, to show myself and the world a completely different side of me. I was no longer the obedient and weak wife, Imani. I had to become Imani Washington, the vice president of the Washington Group, a woman of authority, confident, whom no one would dare to disrespect. This transformation wasn't just to show Jamal and his family their place. It was about reclaiming myself, about finding the true identity I had lost in the darkness of my hellish marriage. I started with my appearance. No more simple, colorless house clothes. Grandpops called the best stylists and designers in Atlanta to the mansion. They brought the latest collections from top luxury brands. I tried everything from flowing silk dresses to elegantly tailored business suits and stunning evening gowns. With each new outfit, I felt like a different person. My natural hair, which I always tied in a simple ponytail, underwent a metamorphosis in the hands of a professional, transforming into a flawless, voluminous custom weave in an elegant shade of ash brown. Makeup artists carefully sculpted my face. The makeup was subtle but effectively concealed my fatigue and highlighted my features, giving me an intelligent and commanding look. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman in the mirror was a stranger, yet at the same time, very familiar. This was me, the me I was supposed to be. From the depths of my soul, a confident, intense, and dazzling aura began to emanate. But the biggest change wasn't in my appearance, it was in my thoughts and actions. I began to actively engage in the group's affairs. I no longer just passively attended meetings. I started to independently analyze projects, read financial reports, and delve into the situations of the various subsidiary companies. The knowledge from my college days, which I thought I had forgotten, came back to life, and combined with my bitter life experiences, it gave me a deeper and more realistic perspective on the business world. I started to voice my opinions and make proposals at meetings. At first, I was met with suspicious glances, especially from the older directors who had served grandpops for years. They probably still saw me as a privileged little girl. But I wasn't discouraged. I convinced them with numbers, logical analysis, and sharp arguments. Gradually, they started to look at me differently, with real respect. Grandpops observed my transformation. He didn't say much, but his eyes were full of pride. He began to entrust me with more important tasks and include me in negotiations with key partners. The business world is the toughest battlefield, he told me. It will make you tougher and stronger than any school. And he was right. Every negotiation and business challenge was a valuable lesson. I learned to keep a cool head under pressure, to read the other party's intentions, and to make decisive, precise decisions. My confidence no longer stemmed from Grandpop's position, but from my own skills and hard work. I was no longer afraid of scrutinizing gazes and no longer trembled when speaking in public. I had found my own voice. My transformation wasn't limited to work. I started to rebuild my social life. I attended business receptions and charity events. I appeared with a brand new image, a beautiful, intelligent, and charismatic businesswoman. The media stopped writing about me as the victim of a high-profile divorce and started calling me the returning queen of the Washington Empire and Atlanta's new rising business star. I knew all this information would surely reach Jamal. I wanted him to see. I wanted him to know that the woman he abandoned and belittled was now in a place he could never reach. I wanted him to regret it. But in a deeper sense, this transformation was for myself. It was a declaration that my life could not be destroyed by one pathetic man. I deserved a better life, a brighter future, and I intended to build that future with my own hands. The phoenix that had burned in the fire of betrayal, it was time for it to rise from the ashes, more beautiful and stronger than ever. About a month had passed since I started working regularly at the group, and my life had completely changed. My days were filled with work, meetings, and business trips. This busyness was the best medicine, allowing me to forget the pain and focus on the future. My image as the vice president of the Washington Group was increasingly featured in the media. I was sure that Jamal and his family saw it all and knew about it, but strangely, they were quiet as a church mouse. No calls, no texts, no confrontations. This silence unnerved me a bit. Were they plotting something? Or had they really gotten scared and given up? Either way, I couldn't let my guard down. I instructed Attorney Thompson's team to continue gathering evidence and preparing for the upcoming trial. One Saturday afternoon, after a stressful week, I decided to treat myself to a moment of relaxation. I wanted to buy a few gifts for Zola. She had a performance at her preschool soon, and I wanted my daughter to be the most beautiful girl there. I got into the new white convertible Grandpops had bought me and drove to a luxury department store downtown. I no longer felt intimidated or awkward as I used to. I walked with confidence, and the image of an elegant lady had become my second nature. In an exclusive children's clothing store, I was busy picking out a pink princess dress for Zola. Then, from behind me, I heard a familiar but sharp voice. Well, look who we have here. The vice president herself. I see you've moved up in the world. Fancy cars, fancy places. I turned around and saw none other than LaToya, Jamal's mistress. But she wasn't alone. At her side, with his arm tenderly around her, stood Jamal. He looked thinner and more tired, but the suit he wore was still sharp. At the sight of me, A flicker of embarrassment and awkwardness crossed his eyes, but he quickly masked it with a cool, indifferent expression. But Latoya was different. She looked me up and down, not hiding the jealousy and hostility in her eyes. Her belly was already quite large, and she deliberately pushed it out, as if challenging me. What? Surprised? You thought you had the right to tell us where we can go? Though someone like you probably spent her whole life in flea markets, so it's understandable. I didn't say a word, just smiled slightly. I didn't want to stoop to her level and get into an argument. My silence seemed to anger her even more. Jamal, look at her. Now that she's a VP, she completely ignores people. Or maybe she's still mad you left her? Well, yeah. How can an old woman who can't even give her husband a son keep him? Are you finished? This time, I didn't stay silent. I looked Latoya straight in the eye and said, not loudly, but as cold as ice, I don't have time to listen to life lessons from a mistress. So could you please move? What? Who's a mistress? Latoya's face contorted with rage. I am Jamal's fiancée and the mother of the child in my belly. You're the one who's not needed here. She tried to lunge at me, but Jamal stopped her. Enough, Latoya. Don't make a scene. Jamal's voice was tinged with exhaustion. He looked at me with a complicated expression. Imani, we don't have to do this. It's all in the past. That's right, it's in the past, I replied. So, keep your woman in check, so she doesn't go around barking at people in public places. After those words, I took the dress I had chosen and went to the cashier. I deliberately pulled out the black credit card, a symbol of the power grandpops had given me. The employee, seeing the card, immediately changed her attitude and bowed respectfully. All the color drained from Latoya and Jamal's faces seeing this scene. I knew this kind of demonstration was a bit childish, but it was necessary. I had to show them that our positions had completely reversed. After paying, with the luxury shopping bag in hand, I walked out of the store without looking at them once. I walked past them as if they were two strangers not worth my attention. But when I was a few steps away, Jamal suddenly called out, Imani, wait! I stopped but didn't turn around. I heard his footsteps approaching. I know I messed up. His voice was desperate. But could you please not destroy my life? My company is on the verge of bankruptcy. If you just said a word to your grandpops, couldn't you help me? I slowly turned around. Looking him straight in the eye, I smiled mockingly. Destroy your life? Mr. Jamal King, do you remember what you and your family wanted to do to me? You wanted to take my assets, even my daughter. Compared to what you did, your company's bankruptcy is a small thing. But that was everything I had. And my youth? My sacrifice? Who will compensate me for that? I cut him off sharply. Be glad it ends here. Don't test my patience. Otherwise, the place you'll end up isn't the stock market, but prison. My words were like a bucket of cold water on Jamal. His face turned completely ashen. He took a step back and couldn't utter a word. I didn't want to waste another second on him. I turned decisively and walked away, leaving him stunned in the crowd. This unexpected encounter was a bit unpleasant, but it showed one thing clearly. Jamal was genuinely scared. He was on the verge of a breakdown, and I felt that the day I would reclaim Zola was very near. The encounter at the department store confirmed that Jamal was in real trouble. The termination of all contracts by the Washington Group was a fatal blow to Golden Future. Other investors began to withdraw their funds, and partners broke their agreements. The ship that he and Latoya had so carefully built with my money was on the verge of sinking. But a cornered animal is the most dangerous. Instead of admitting defeat, Jamal decided to bet everything on one last card. He decided to throw a lavish party at a 5-star hotel. Officially, it was to be a customer appreciation party and a presentation of a new innovative technology project to attract investors. In reality, it was a desperate attempt to save his company and lure in more naive investors. This information reached me through Attorney Thompson's information network. When I heard it, a bold idea formed in my mind. Instead of just watching him perform his spectacle, why not turn his stage into the final judgment? I immediately consulted with Grandpops and Attorney Thompson. This is an excellent opportunity. Attorney Thompson's eyes lit up. Investors, partners, even the media, everyone will be at this party. If we expose him right there, the effect will be 1,000 times stronger than in a rigid court trial. He will be completely socially destroyed, with no way to defend himself. Grandpops also agreed but expressed some concern. Isn't this plan too risky? What if that scoundrel, backed into a wall, tries to hurt you? Don't worry, Grandpops, I said with confidence. I won't go alone. Everything will be perfectly prepared. This will be the final act of this whole saga. The plan was developed with extraordinary precision. In the first stage, through a third party, posing as a venture capital fund from Singapore, we expressed special interest in Jamal's innovative project. I had them promise him a huge investment of $20 million. For Jamal, in his current situation, such an amount was like a lifeline from heaven. Without a shadow of a doubt, he swallowed the bait. Elated, he sent the fund all the detailed information about the project and his company presentation. He had no idea that all these materials were being analyzed by a team of experts from the Washington Group and used as additional evidence of his fraud. In the second stage, I informed him that a representative of the investment fund would appear at the party to officially sign the agreement. This news excited him even more and lulled his suspicions. He spent his last money on organizing a lavish party to impress the big investor. He even invited all the former partners who had turned their backs on him to save face. He also invited journalists from several major media outlets to use the event as a springboard for a spectacular comeback. He didn't know that all these guests would be the audience for his downfall. On the night of the party, the five-star hotel glittered with magnificent lights. The ballroom was buzzing with a lively atmosphere. Jamal and Latoya greeted guests at the entrance with confident smiles. They looked like a couple at the pinnacle of success. Latoya wore a tight-fitting evening gown, deliberately showcasing her already large belly. She moved from guest to guest, laughing and chatting, acting like a true lady of the house. When the party was in full swing, the grand doors of the ballroom suddenly swung open. I walked in. My appearance silenced the room for a moment. All eyes turned to me. I was wearing a simple but very elegant black evening gown, a sleek creation, with my hair swept up high, revealing a slender neck and sparkling diamond jewelry. My makeup was bold, emphasizing my red lips and sharp gaze. At my side stood Grandpops, and behind us were Attorney Thompson and 2 security guards. The appearance of the head of the Washington Group shocked people even more, and the murmurs grew louder. Jamal and Latoya, seeing us, froze with smiles on their faces. Jamal's face lost all color, and he hurried over, stammering, Mr. Washington, I'm Mani. What are you doing here? I smiled. I knew it was a smile that would chill him to the bone. Can't we be here? I heard Golden Future has an important event tonight. I heard there's even a big investor from Singapore. As someone in the industry, I couldn't miss such an opportunity to learn. But we didn't send an invitation. Oh, really? I held up the gilded invitation I was holding. And what's this? I guess your employee made a mistake. Jamal was speechless. He knew I was deliberately provoking him, but in front of so many people, especially Grandpops, he could do nothing. With a forced smile, he had to lead us to the prepared VIP table. The party continued, but the atmosphere had completely changed. All attention was no longer on the main character, Jamal, but on our table. People began to whisper and speculate about my appearance. Was it a reconciliation or a public warning? The trap was set, and the stage was prepared. I sat calmly, sipping my wine and watching Jamal's face, filled with anxiety and confusion. The best show, the most dramatic final act, was about to begin. When the party reached its most important point, Jamal took the stage. He tried to regain his confidence, grabbed the microphone, and began his speech. He talked about the vision and mission of Golden Future, about a revolutionary technological project that would change the world. He painted a magnificent future and promising prospects for the investors to delude them. Latoya, sitting in the front row, looked at him with admiration and pride. Both of them, lost in the illusion of a dramatic comeback, had no idea that the curtain was about to fall. And tonight, Jamal said in an excited voice, we have the honor of hosting a major investor from Singapore. This partnership will give Golden Future the wings to soar even higher and further. When he was at the height of his speech, the giant LED screen behind him, which was displaying the company logo, suddenly went black. A stir went through the room. Jamal, disoriented, turned around, but he didn't know what was happening. He signaled to the technical team, but no one responded. And then, to everyone's surprise, the screen turned on again. But it wasn't the Golden Future logo. The first image that appeared was my face, covered in bruises and wounds, my eyes swollen, and my leg in a cast, clearly photographed. The picture was taken the morning after that fateful night. Next to it was a large, clear caption, "The true face of love." A deathly silence fell over the room. The soft music stopped. Everyone held their breath and stared at the screen. Jamal's face on stage turned ashen. With a trembling hand, he pointed at the screen and stammered, "What? What is this? Turn it off now." But it was too late. The screen switched to the next scene. This time, it was a video recording. A recording from a CCTV camera in the rundown apartment building, showing Jamal yanking my hair and kicking me. The quality wasn't the best, but his brutal and aggressive behavior was undeniably clear. The murmur in the room turned into gasps of horror and outrage. My God, what a monster. He looks so respectable, but he's a man like that. LaToya, sitting below, also froze. She looked back and forth between the screen and Jamal with panic on her face. The show wasn't over yet. The screen continued to show photos of Jamal and LaToya in tender embraces, happy family pictures with their hidden son, and finally, densely printed bank statements proving how my $2 million had flowed into their company. And finally, the ultimate blow. An audio recording was played. The sound filled the entire room. It was a conversation between Jamal and LaToya, discussing their fraudulent plan and talking about turning me into a cash cow. That woman is naive and gullible. She's easy to fool. As soon as I ask for money, she brings it right away. Jamal's voice, full of confidence and contempt, echoed through the hall. When the recording ended, the room exploded. The silence turned into waves of fury. Curses and scornful looks were directed at Jamal and LaToya. Fraudster, what a scumbag. Give us our money back. The investors and partners who had just been listening to Jamal's speech now looked at him as if he were a monster. Several got up and left. Others took out their phones and started recording. Jamal stood on stage as if struck by lightning. He was trembling all over. Everything had collapsed in just a few minutes. He looked at me with hatred and desperation in his eyes. He knew this was all my plan. Then I calmly stood up and walked onto the stage. I took the second microphone from the hands of an equally stunned staff member. I looked straight at Jamal, and I said coldly, but clearly enough for everyone to hear, Mr. Jamal King, your performance was excellent, but it's time for the curtain to fall. I turned to the audience. My voice gained strength. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Imani, this man's wife. What you have just seen is only a small fraction of the truth. I stand here today not to complain, but to expose the true face of a professional con artist and brute who hides behind the mask of a successful man. I held up a file of documents. In my hands, I have all the evidence of fraud, embezzlement, unfair trade practices, and tax evasion by Golden Future. This revolutionary project he just spoke of is just a fantasy to swindle money from you. Shut up! Jamal howled like a wounded animal. He lunged toward me but was stopped by my 2 security guards. He could only struggle desperately and curse. LaToya, seeing that the situation was hopeless, tried to sneak out of the party, leaving her lover to his fate. The customer appreciation and investor acquisition party had turned into the most humiliating public trial Jamal could have ever imagined. In the chaos that erupted in the ballroom, as Jamal, restrained by the security guards, was still howling, a group of people in police uniforms suddenly appeared at the entrance. Their arrival silenced everyone. At the head was a high-ranking police officer with a stern face. Flanked by 2 officers, he quickly approached the stage. People automatically parted to let him through. The officer stopped in front of Jamal and showed him a document with a red seal. Mr. Jamal King, you are under arrest on suspicion of fraud, embezzlement, aggravated assault, and violation of commercial law. You must come with us for questioning. Each word from the officer was like a final hammer blow, shattering the last remnants of Jamal's hope. He stopped struggling. His entire body went limp, and he stared into the void with empty eyes. He knew it was truly over. 2 police officers approached and handcuffed him. The cold, metallic click of the cuffs echoed in the silent space, like a bell announcing the end of a sinner. No, it wasn't me, it was her, she framed me. Jamal muttered unconsciously, but no one was listening anymore. Led like a defeated dog with his head down, he passed through the crowd of people who once admired and applauded him. The ballroom doors closed, and with them, a ruined life disappeared. At the same time, another police team arrived at LaToya's luxury apartment. She had barely escaped the party and hadn't had time to compose herself before she had to face justice. In a panic, and pregnant, LaToya could no longer maintain her former defiant and sharp demeanor. Under a barrage of questions from investigators, she quickly broke down and confessed everything. She admitted to the conspiracy with Jamal and confirmed that Golden Future was just a tool for money laundering. To get a lighter sentence, she even handed over all the accounting books, documents, and other evidence she had secretly copied to protect herself. She sold out her lover without a second thought. The drama didn't end there. After Jamal's arrest at the party, his mother, who was attending as the future mother of the president, suffered a massive shock. The sight of her beloved son in handcuffs, her dreams of wealth and luxury dissolving like smoke, caused her to scream and faint on the spot. People rushed to help and called an ambulance. She was taken to the hospital in an unconscious state. The show she and her son had so carefully directed had brought their family a tragic end. The mills of God grind slowly, yet they grind exceeding small. The main perpetrator, the accomplice, and even the passive observers, all who had done wrong, ultimately received their karma. I stood on the stage and silently watched it all. There was no victor's euphoria in my heart, but a strangely peaceful feeling. At last, justice had been served. Grandpops came up and put his hand on my shoulder. "It's all over, my girl." I nodded. A single tear rolled down my cheek. But this time, it was a tear of liberation. I had been through the storm, and now, a clear blue sky awaited me. In the following days, Jamal's case was the center of public attention. Thanks to the irrefutable evidence and LaToya's testimony, all his crimes came to light. The media scrutinized his past, from a poor but ambitious young man to a professional con artist and a fake tycoon preying on wealthy and naive women. The public was shocked and outraged by his true face. I, from a heartless wife, instantly became a symbol of a strong woman fighting for justice. The earlier criticism turned into respect and sympathy. I received countless letters and messages from strange women. They wrote that my story had given them the inspiration and courage to break free from toxic relationships. I knew my fight was no longer just my own. 6 months later, the public trial of Jamal King and his associates took place in the Fulton County Superior Court. The case attracted huge interest from the public and the media. From early morning, a crowd of journalists and onlookers gathered outside the courthouse. I appeared in court as the victim and the key witness. I no longer felt fear or anxiety. I was here to face the past and witness justice being served. Dressed in an elegant white suit, with light makeup on my face, I exuded calm and confidence. When I entered the courtroom, all eyes turned to me. I calmly walked to the victim's bench and sat next to Attorney Thompson. On the other side, in the dock, sat Jamal, LaToya, and even Jamal's mother. They looked pathetic. Jamal was gaunt. His hair had turned gray, and his eyes were sunken. He didn't dare to lift his head. LaToya, with her large belly, sobbed continuously. My mother-in-law, after her stroke, sat in a wheelchair with a twisted mouth, babbling incoherently. Only her gaze in my direction burned with hatred. The trial began. The prosecutor read the indictment, listing all their crimes: domestic violence, fraud and embezzlement, defamation, conspiracy. Each charge was accompanied by the powerful evidence we had provided: video and audio recordings, bank statements, witness testimonies. When it was my turn to testify, I stood before the court and, without hesitation, clearly told my story. I spoke of the years of sacrifice, the violence, the betrayal, and their cruel conspiracy. I did not cry. My voice was strangely calm because I was no longer a victim complaining about her pain. I was a survivor, demanding justice. After my testimony, a deep silence fell over the courtroom. In the eyes of the judge, the jury, and the public, I saw sympathy and anger. When it was Jamal's turn, with his head down, he quietly pleaded guilty to all charges. He had nothing left to deny. He only begged for a chance at a new beginning, for a lenient sentence so he could atone for his sins toward his unborn child. LaToya, crying, tried to shift all the blame onto Jamal, claiming he had manipulated her. She begged for a reduced sentence due to her pregnancy, but the net of justice had been cast, and no one could escape their guilt. After several days of trial, it was finally time to announce the verdict. The judge, an elderly man with a stern face, began to read the final judgment. The court, after reviewing all the case files, evidence, and testimonies, has decided as follows. Defendant Jamal King, for aggravated assault, fraud of significant value, defamation, and other charges, is sentenced to a total of 8 years in prison, with a restraining order against the family. The court also granted me sole custody of Zola. Leaving the courthouse, I looked up at the sky. Grandpops was holding Zola's hand, and she was smiling broadly. Our nightmare was over. Now, only a golden, true future awaited us. Yeah,